Just an opportunity. Media availability. Usually, it's dominated by the football staff and student athletes. I thought it would make myself accessible as the flagship campus of the Commonwealth. It's important for us to have a level of transparency with the things that we do every day, and obviously been a challenging 48 hours for us in our football program, just with what's transpired. But we're looking forward not only to this week and playing South Florida, but looking forward to what the second half of our football season has in store for Coach Whipple and our staff and our student athletes. And I would just say, as an opening statement, and I'm going to defer all the football questions to Coach Pinkham, but that, with the last 48 hours and the suspension, that ultimately I made the decision to suspend Coach Whipple for this week's activities, football activities, and the game on Saturday. Not certainly something that I anticipated, and I don't think it's something that's indicative of what we've come to know from Coach Whipple, and so I want to make sure that everyone understands that we're looking ahead. We're not looking in the rearview mirror, but looking forward to what we can do this week to prepare our young men for a game on Saturday, and ultimately as a program to prepare for the second half of the year.
Coach, if you could just talk about practice yesterday.
We had Monday is kind of an introductory day where we introduce just our base ideas for the week. We get into very specific defensive concepts, and I'm sure offensively they do the exact same thing come Tuesday, Wednesday, and usually Thursdays are a little bit of a review session for Saturday. So yesterday as an introductory day was very, very good. Our kids they're very resilient, and they have a lot of energy. They worked pretty hard at practice yesterday. We talked a little bit about what it takes to get over the hump. If you can continue to do and prepare the way you've prepared, you probably are going to get those same results. So how could each and every one of us, coaches, players, all take a step forward on improving the way in which we prepare for each game? So that was essentially, that's what we did yesterday. That's what I talked to him about before we took the field. I was an interim head coach, Jason Swepson, who's a New England guy. Jason was the head coach at Elon University, and he had an episode, a mild heart attack at one point in time, and I think it was a Thursday night. The athletic director called me up after I had gone home, and Jason was taken to the hospital, and the athletic director said, he's going to be in a hospital for a few days. So I had practice. I didn't have a whole week as we will this week, but I had a Friday and then the game on Saturday. So it's a little bit different when you're the head coach. All those tough decisions. Do you go for it on fourth down? Do you go for two? Do you punt? What do you do? Those are things that you don't worry yourself with when you're the coordinator, either offensively or defensively. That's usually the head coach who makes those decisions. So that was a new experience.
Take questions.
And I guess sort of basically, who's going to handle play calling offensively, defensively?
Spencer's probably going to take over. I mean, for me, I have no idea what we call things, and I'm not involved with the offense at all. So Spencer, I believe, they're working together as a group, but he'll be the guy who makes the decisions as to what plays they call. Defensively, certainly I will, and then Charles Walker will handle the kicking responsibilities. I'll decide when and if we punt or those sorts of things. Do we go for two or that sort of stuff? But in terms of who's making the actual calls, those two gentlemen will take care of their respective sides of the ball.
I guess you mentioned the kicking game. Just an update on Lake Caggiano. Did you expect that he'll be back for this weekend? Or?
From what I heard from the training staff today is I believe he's supposed to be back at practice today. So. I'm sure Charles will make a decision as to who we want to go with in what situation, but I think he's going to be available, yeah.
And how are the players responding? How was practice? Are they distracted by this at all, or were you able to keep them pretty focused?
We addressed it And the way we approached it was to say there's nothing that is within our control. So let's focus on the things we can control. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the things we can control is the intensity with which we practice. And it's going to be important if we're going to give ourselves the best chance for victory. We can't waste a day. We have to go in. We can't be sulking. We can't be distracted. We have to go in and have a high energy day. So right from the start, we usually begin with a flex period where we get loose. And Brian, our head strength coach, is an emotional, intense guy himself, and I think he set the tone right from the start. We got ready with a lot of energy, and we had a real good practice. I mean, we were pleased, maybe not surprised, but we were pleased as we came off the field.
And what's next when the coach does come back next week? Are there any plans of a player-coach talk or anything like that? I mean, what are the guidelines and what's next when the coach is now back on the team, essentially?
Mark addressed, he didn't just leave campus. He addressed it with the players, and he gave them an opportunity to talk, and he spoke, and it was good. I don't think anything will change when Mark gets back. The kids will be excited, and we talked about not having our leader with us at the time, but we got to march on. So do the best we can.
Just playing devil's advocate here, some have said the suspension goes too far. And second part of that, would you have made this decision 2 years ago?
Good questions. I think anytime you make decisions, I don't, as a leader in college athletics in this university, in this department, there are decisions that I'm going to make that some are going to agree with and some aren't. And that's what being a leader is all about. And ultimately for us, I had a lot of good, thoughtful conversation with campus leadership, with a number of other people outside of campus to make sure that I had the right perspective. Because when this came up on Sunday, I wanted to make sure it wasn't making a decision or doing anything that was in a vacuum. And then I had part of those conversations were with Coach Whipple as well. And in reference to 2 years ago, your question about 2 years ago, I don't know. I don't know. I can just tell you the dialogue and the conversation that we had on Sunday was, again, thoughtful, and I think really we didn't do anything in haste. We didn't do anything quickly, and we made sure that we were thinking about all the things here, the ingredients that went into the decision. And ultimately, that was my decision, and we arrived at the 1 week suspension.
Brian, have you given any thought to a larger suspension, a lesser suspension? How did you arrive at those numbers?
I don't know that I would characterize my thoughts or others. I think whenever you look at these things, you make sure you get the input of not just those close to you, but others. And certainly, I looked at all the things in front of us to make a good decision. And I wouldn't get into detail on where it wasn't really a robust conversation one way or the other. That was my recommendation, and I arrived at that after some consideration.
Brian, I guess moving forward, obviously at the end of the season, you conduct a review of the season, kind of make decisions based on that. Does this decision, do you feel like, or this incident, do you feel like that has any effect on what you and Coach Whipple and kind of the leadership decide in terms of the future of the program come November, or is this sort of an isolated incident and we're going to handle that, and you're looking at maybe a more holistic picture coming into the season?
I think I've made it a priority of mine in my now 4 years at UMass to say to our coaching staff and to say to those externally that we look at all our programs throughout the course of time, and especially at the end of seasons, we take stock of where we are and how we're going to move this forward. And Coach Whipple's been a great partner in that way, and we'll continue to have dialogue like we do. I go in and see him oftentimes almost every Sunday, Monday, and catch up just on the game that we had and the game that we're about to have. And so those conversations are going to continue, and we'll have that dialogue and make sure that we're going to put the best football product and program out there that we can moving forward. And ultimately, this is this is something that has come up in the middle of the season, and we are getting ready under Ed's leadership to play South Florida. We're going to go do everything we can to win that game and the 5 thereafter. And at the end of the season, we'll evaluate the whole body of work and make sure that we're putting ourselves in a position to have a winning culture and winning season and success in 2019 and beyond.
Ryan, the comments and question we're taking out of the official transcript that were sent to us did that happen on their end in Ohio, or did that happen on your end? If it happened on your end, why were those comments taken out?
I don't know that I.
Transcript came from Ohio, and so the standard practice when you host a team, you do the official transcript. So similar here, we would provide a transcript of the post-game polls, and send then a standard practice for a visiting institution to take that poll sheet.
Did they provide any explanation as to why they took those comments out?
Josh?
And obviously, another rough weekend for you guys defensively last week in Athens. What did you see on the tape from that performance, and kind of what is your plan, I guess, in terms of hoping to sort of improve upon that performance this weekend?
I think one of the things that we've been trying to deal with is, as I've probably shared before, we're looking to get our best 11 guys on the field. Sometimes when you have injuries or you don't have the option of playing a guy, you take a guy from one position, put him in another position, and feeling like, all right, these are the best 11 guys we have. He hasn't had all the experience. The amount of time we've invested for a guy at a particular position, it does take a while for them to play. And in addition to when I do that, I look at the guy that I replaced him with, and he's not as good at that position as the guy that I moved from one to the other. I think this week we're going to have an opportunity to play some guys that have naturally played where they were recruited to play and where they played all spring long. So, we just have to do a better job too. There's no getting around. Football is a game of tackling, and we've got to tackle better. And we're making an effort through the course of this week in practice to emphasize. College football nowadays, you really don't have full practices where you tackle people. It's just the injury factor is entered into it. So you really reduce the number of opportunities to tackle. But there's a couple different ways you do it. Sometimes you tag. Like if you go out and practice and you don't have pads on, you tag the guy who has the ball. Other days you'll go out when you do have pads on, at least shoulder pads, where you'll butt him up. And so we've really took an emphasis today. We have messages on all of our position doors. It's a no tag Tuesday. We're going to hit each other. We're not tackling them to the ground, but we have to find ways. If you ask me a question, what am I going to do to address tackling? That's one of the ways in which we're going to do it. I think, overall, we have to do a better job. We have to do a better job, both in playing and in coaching.
What does South Florida bring to the party? What's the biggest concern you have?
Well, they're 4-0, and they beat some pretty decent teams. The thing that Coach Strong has gotten in his team is they're physical, and they're not a lot of smoke and mirrors. They're right at you. It's not going to be a secret as to what they'll do when they get here. I don't imagine, who knows, but I don't imagine they're going to come up with all of a sudden they're going to run the wishbone or something that they haven't shown in the first 4 games. I would imagine they're going to continue to do what they've done. If you've seen them on video, it's the type of offense where they get nothing, they get nothing, they get nothing. They'll punt, they get the ball back, nothing, and then they'll break through and a guy will go 80 yards. They beat Illinois. I don't know if you saw the end of that game. Illinois is playing a cover 2, and the corner forgets or whether the safety was supposed to get over, or I don't know exactly what coverage they had planned, but the guy ran right down the sideline, less than 2 minutes left, touchdown, they win the game. They're playing East Carolina, and it's somewhat of a short yardage situation, so they're stacked to defend the run, and the guy splits the gap, the guy goes in the wrong gap, and he goes 80 yards. So they've scored touchdowns against Georgia Tech. They had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, and they won by whatever it was, 13 points. There's 14 points right there. So they've been able to generate. They've been very, very patient, and they like to run the football. they'll take time off the clock by doing so. But they're a fundamental football team. And again, I don't like to use the term old school, but they're a let's get in your face and knock you down football team.
Brian, would you mind talking a little bit about the sensitivity training that Coach Whipple's going to have to be going through? What is that and what is that?
Yeah, we have a workplace development office here on campus that will structure a one-on-one training session with Mark, and our human resource department's working through that right now to set that up. So that'll happen here shortly, I would say in the next probably week or two.
Brian, I'm sorry to bring this up again, but this was not a local news story. It was from the Boston Herald, the New York Post, of course. I guess my question is, are you concerned about future recruits in the future, and if they're going to be deterred from having Mark Whipple as head coach?
No, I'm not worried about that. I think this is an isolated incident, and from our standpoint, again, I think at the end of this week, when Coach Whipple gets reinstated, he's the leader of our program, and we're going to go forward. And I don't anticipate that it'll hurt us at all in recruiting. And obviously it's been covered more widely than just this region, but I would say that. I think we got a lot of football left, and I think that certainly contributes a lot to what recruits think about our program. And if we have a level of success in the next 6 games, then that will certainly help when we come to sign, young men in December and in February. Matt, I can't hear you, just so you know.
Coach, you mentioned that Coach Whipple addressed the team on Sunday. What was his message and how was it received by the team?
His message was that he probably made an error in judgment, and he was sorry for it. He didn't mean it that way, and this is what the results were going to be in this day and age. You can't do that, and he wasn't bitter, or he doesn't. He was very reasonable. I mean, in this day and age, in the culture in which we live, I thought he did a great job explaining it to the kids, and I think the kids understood exactly where we're all at.
What was your reaction when you heard him make that comparison?
I don't know that I could characterize it. It was brought to my attention on Sunday. I am outside listening to, and every place you go, it's a little different. At home, we have a formal press conference. In this case, at Ohio, it was just our sideline reporter interviewing Coach Whipple, and then a woman from Ohio who was just recording for the transcript. So it's pretty informal outside of our locker room. And I was within an earshot. I didn't hear it at the time. I heard it on Sunday. And, my first thing is that's not a word that I would use to describe anything related to a football game. That was probably my first thought. And then from there, obviously, I just think that he could, and that we needed to make sure that we were using different language in our comments around athletics.
Real quick on the conference call, Matt, are you there?
I am.
You have a question?
I have a couple. One, you had a league office. You probably had a situation where your coaches couldn't be criticizing officials to that degree to begin with. Do you have, have you given Mark any kind of a message about his kind of thing about officials at all after that?
Mark and I have talked, and you often talk with your coaches in a competitive environment. There are things that you can control, and one thing you can control is your student athletes, and so we focus mainly on those things. And I believe this, and there have been a part of a lot of games in 20 plus years of college athletics as a student athlete and an administrator, and I know Ed has as a coach, and Mark Whipple has as a player and a coach, and you don't always get all the calls that you want, or they don't always go your way, but ultimately it's how you react to those things. And we had chances, I thought, on Saturday. Our kids certainly played hard. We had chances to win the game, and the officiating was not did not contribute in my mind to the loss, and so I try to focus those things with Coach Whipple and other coaches to say what can we do to be better, and so that's always been our goal, and that will continue to be moving forward.
You have
You
another
said you
question?
had conversations with campus leadership. Was the chancellor involved, obviously naturally involved in that, and did he have to sign on to the plan, whatever you decided? And did you speak to any women's groups involved, given the nature of the comment?
Yeah, it was a number of campus leaders, and I'm not going to comment specifically on who, but a number of women, not necessarily groups. Being a Sunday, it was a little bit harder to try to, get everybody on the same page in terms of just communication. But a number of female leaders and a number of male leaders on this campus that I trust, that and including our chancellor. So ultimately, I made the recommendation to our chancellor as to my decision, and he and I discussed it, and we came out with the release Sunday night.
And Matt, real quick, are there any Tampa Bay riders on the call? Okay. Matt, did you have anything else?
I'm wondering, there's supposed to be a suspension without pay. The money that would have gone to Coach Whipple just go back into your athletic general fund, or is that money, you earmark that money for anything? In some cases, when there's in other sports situations, when there's a fine, goes specifically to perhaps to do something charitable. And it's curious if you guys were doing that, or if you guys doing that.
We haven't determined what we'll do. It's just that we won't for that 6-day period won't pay Mark salary for those 6 days. So as an institution, we haven't had those conversations. Well, I can tell you, I think there's often times that folks, will pick groups to make donations to or involve themselves in philanthropy. The last thing I think any of us wanted to do was look like we were, buying our way out of something that was not favorable. And so Matt, we haven't gotten that far on what that means as a department. Just wanted to make sure that we looked at the football aspect and the aspect of him leading our program for the week.
We have time for one more.
I think it's a quick follow-up. Is the MAC able to fine Mark for his comments if they decide that his comments stepped over the line? Are they able to fine him as a non-lead coach?
No. No. And I will say that I have had conversations with the AD at Ohio and the commissioner of the MAC just to let them know that, ultimately, again, it was the field, the field of play where this thing was decided. And so I wanted them to understand that from the institutional perspective and from my seat. And because we've had a good relationship with that league, and I have a lot of respect for Jim Schaus at Ohio, the AD there, and what he and his staff have done in their football program. And they're a heck of a team, and they beat us on Saturday. And that's ultimately what it boils down to. They were a better football team on that day, and they're tough at home, and they got us.